As you know, I'm Jean-Daniel Safor. I'm a core faculty of ITS and also faculty and even the chair at the moment of the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department. So it's really a privilege for me to be here. Sorry, I missed some previous sessions, but it's a privilege for me to introduce some of our students because I think they are the future of transportation. And let me elaborate why. First of all, you know, transportation is at a crossroads. Our world is changing. I think it has never been a better time to study transportation. Well, you know about AI, for example, you know about progress in batteries. So we are making great strides in electrification. We're investing in public transit in California. We're investing in fast trains. I mean, there's going to be a line linking the north and the south. There's going to be a line from LA to Las Vegas, right? So many new technologies, many opportunities for us to do meaningful research, to get involved, to advance their careers. And as you know, we work on a broad range of topics, from zero emission transportation to automated vehicles, to micromobility, to transit. Professor Jean, for example, is working on new models to model travel behavior. Our colleague, Professor Highland, is working on micromobility. Professor Jay is working on all of the above. Also very involved in active transportation, right? So the thing is, what we need to keep in mind is this is not just an exercise, right? It's not pure math. What we do has an impact on real life. And I want us to remember that, especially in the context of changes in what the federal government is doing. And I would like to argue that we should not focus too much on that. It's just a bump in the road, okay? So you've all heard about mass layoffs at NSF, at NOAA, at NIH, pressure to reduce indirect costs. TRB may be partly in trouble, but that should not stop us, right? We have other sources of funding. We have to be more creative. We have to not be deterred, and you have to stay true to our values. So let's just remember, I mean, a key example of someone we should think about when we encounter difficulties, Rosa Parks, right? She faced much more challenging circumstances when she refused to give up her seat on a bus in the 50s, in 1955, right? The consequences were much darker for her. But without her, we would live in a much different world, people like her, right? Of course, we're scientists and engineers, so it's not difficult to find in history people who run into problems much more severe than the problems we are facing. Think of Galileo. The church was arguing that the world is flat. Oh my God. And they were threatening to burn him. The guy stick to his guns, right? To the freedom, to his beliefs. Another example is Darwin's, which is still very much contested, right? Some states are banning teaching of his theories. Think about what your children are going to think if you give up your beliefs. You're going to be ridiculous. So stay true to yourself. Keep on doing the work that you want to do. We will support you, right? And the state of California is here to provide alternatives. So what you're doing is critically important, right? You guys are the future of transportation. We truly mean it. So it's my pleasure to introduce the three speakers we have today. As you know, we are fostering a culture of innovation, interdisciplinary work, mentoring, all of us in ITS. And so it's my pleasure to introduce today Henry Bernal, Negin Shariat, and Siwei who is going to serve as our Master of Ceremonies. Thank you, Siwei.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for Dr. Safor's opening message. And thank you for Dr. Jay joining. Thank you, Vicky, for organizing. Thank you, Jared, for organizing everything. And thanks for coming. We always cherish our our research work, and this is an opportunity for us to share our research work for academic communication. And we are thankful that Vicky organized this event so that we could be able to share our research with our friends, with our professors, and do have a little bit things. It would be great if you could keep your cell phone silence, and we have refreshment over there. Please feel free to take whatever you want. And so as Professor Sapor said, today's symposium will include 3 presentations. We'll have Henry's presentation on travel behavior, on especially the Metro Go Pass program, and the second presentation will be Negin's presentation, transit agency partnering with the TNCs for low demand service, and the last will be my presentation and a stable day-to-day departure time dynamics, and I would also like to talk a little bit about PSR Congress. I attended PSR Congress for the last 2 years. So this is a mock presentation for the PSR Congress. So in this year, Henry and Negin, they will attend the PSR Congress, and also Lawrence.
Last minute.
Yeah, we attend the PSR Congress.
Oh, okay.
But this year I submit a abstract, but due to the time conflict, I wasn't able to participate. But I'm grateful for the opportunity
That's
to
24th and 25th.
yeah to present a ECI. And
Ah.
I always learn a lot from the PSR Congress, and I also encourage our students, if you could, please do attend PSR Congress, and this year is in Berkeley. So without further
Will
ado,
it be virtual also?
probably no.
Probably not.
Probably in person. Yeah. So without further ado, let's give applause to welcome Henry to introduce his research to us.
Okay, so I'm representing Professor Brownstone, right, who is Henry's advisor. So as you know, in ITS, we have several programs. We have the Transportation Engineering Program. We have the Transportation Science Program. The director is here. Thank you, Jay. We also are part of the Witness Protection Program. And Henry is a proud member of that program. And so almost nothing is known about Henry. We just know that he's been with us for several years and he's working with Professor Brownstone. Because of his Eastern European accent, we suspect that he's a high-value scientist.
Which means French?
He's working on travel behavior, which makes him a very dangerous person. Discrete choice modeling, and he's also interested in studying urban transportation policy, hence his work on the Go Pass program in LA County. He has worked extensively with student populations to study their travel behavior. Please welcome Henry on our behalf.
Thank you, Jean-Daniel, for such a riveting introduction. And before I get started, everyone wish Siwei luck for his grad slam final, right?
Oh, yes,
Oh,
yes.
Yes.
nice.
Yes.
Everyone wish him luck
Of course.
and congratulate him for winning the was it the TRB
3-minute
dissertation
thesis.
challenge? Yes, 3-minute thesis challenge. But yes, thank you everyone for coming today. This is a project that I've been working on extensively with Professor David Brownstone. We've been working on this since, I want to say the last year and a half. And it's related to studying travel behavior among the community college student cohort. So before, where's the, how do I make the slide change?
Yeah. There's an advancer up there.
Oh, that's a click. Okay. All right, so before I get started, I just wanted to make a quick acknowledgement to the research funds that we obtained from the UC statewide transportation research program made available through California Senate Bill 1. Okay, so a little bit of background. Why is it that I'm so interested in studying travel behavior among youth? First is that travel behavior among youth is particularly understudied in the travel behavior literature, specifically cohorts that are attending college. They're typically underrepresented in wide-scale household travel surveys like the NHTS. Travel diary methods tend to kind of fall apart with these cohorts because they're very hard to reach, and it's very hard to kind of keep them actively entering data. And also, one big challenge was the COVID-19 pandemic, right? It was a paradigm shift in travel behavior. But recent breakthroughs have made it have renewed or sparked interest in studying younger cohorts, particularly those in school. Technological innovations like Google Maps API or app-based travel diaries now are becoming a thing. Methodological innovations like longitudinal surveys that were actually conducted by a group of researchers in Toronto. And also political interventions like transit agencies pursuing programs that reduce or even eliminate fares altogether for student cohorts. So the contribution that I'm presenting today asks students directly about their transportation choices in some revealed preference setting, mainly in their trips to campus and whether they participate in the LA Go Pass program, which I'll speak about more in depth in a later slide, as well as introducing a stated preference experiment setting. And that component allows for analysis of policies beyond the scope of just the Go Pass program. So a little policy background, LA Metro introduced the Go Pass program in the fall of 2021. What it did was that it eliminated fares on most transit services, particularly fixed route transit, for students attending K through 12 and community colleges across LA County. It covers up to this point, I think 17 transit agencies. And as I mentioned, most fixed route transit. I believe the notable exception is like Santa Clarita. They've never wanted to budge and they seem to not want to participate. And it actually became a permanent LA Metro program in the spring of 2024. Now, the way it works is that when students that are eligible to receive Go Pass, they don't receive it automatically. They actually have to go to their school or go to their college and they request the card from their school and then need to activate it.
Participate, right?
Say again?
The school has to participate.
Yes. So the school has to be participating in the program. It's essentially a slew of agreements that LA Metro and different school districts and community college districts kind of got together on.
But all school districts are part of it.
Not all.
No.
Not all.
Okay.
The big ones are like LAUSD, Long Beach, the big community college districts are part of it, but not every school district in LA County is part of this program. And so students that are eligible or are attending eligible schools, they would request a tab card, and then they would have to activate it with LA Metro for use. So the target population here, as I mentioned, is community college students. We surveyed students attending classes at all 9 of the LA community college campuses. You can see the locations, it's not very big, but I'll try to make it clear. You can see the locations of the college campuses with these little red dots here. I'll get a better map for the PSR Congress presentation. They are the largest consortium of community colleges in the United States. In the 2021-22 academic year, they enrolled over 200,000 students. From a transportation equity standpoint, I also find this group to be very interesting. They're low income, they're diverse, majority Hispanic. They face high economic insecurity. A lot of them are low income. Many of them are first generational college students. And many of the students also move on to 4-year institutions. Okay, so a little background about the survey. So we sent out 115,000 email invitations in April and May of last year. We received about 2,700 responses, and we offered some incentives to students who completed the survey. They were entered into a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card, and they also received some additional money for completing an impatience task at the end of the survey. About 1 in 15 students received a gift card. The focus of my presentation today will be this stated preference experiment that we conduct within this survey. But other parts of the survey ask questions about their GoPass participation, some of their actual travel behavior, particularly commuting to campus, some of their attitudes regarding general concerns and concerns about using transit, and just some demographic questions to ensure representativeness of the sample. Okay. So diving into the stated preference design, participants were shown 3 scenarios for hypothetical trips of varying lengths. The first scenario was for a long 12-mile trip. The second one was a more medium-sized 7-mile trip. And the last scenario was a short 2-mile trip. Some students had to pick their preferred alternative, others ranked from best to worst. After the 2-mile trip scenario, respondents were asked whether they preferred to walk instead of complete the trip using their chosen alternative. And for reasons I might get to in the Q&A, the analysis that I'm presenting today focuses on the subsample that just completed the experiment where they picked their preferred alternative. The attributes of the experiment include the travel mode, travel time, the waiting time, travel costs, and whether Wi-Fi was available. One of the instructions that at least we included in the prompt for this experiment was to kind of think of waiting time as a part of the travel time. So I might explain waiting time a little bit differently than most other discrete choice experiments would. And the modes that were available were bus, car, train, e-bike, scooter rental, Metro Micro, which is an on-demand rideshare service that is offered within certain zones by LA Metro, and of course, a self-driving car robo taxi service akin to Waymo. Okay. So let's kind of take a deep dive into some of the sample statistics for this subsample. First off, there was some oversampling. We did oversample some full-time students. I also think we oversampled younger students. I believe we oversampled female students a little bit. And so to kind of adjust for that non-response bias, we weighted the sample statistics based on the population, based on the population distributions. So you can see here that about 1/3 of them use GoPass, about 1/3 of the students use GoPass. A majority have a driver's license. There's about 2 household vehicles in the sample. 20% is enrolled full-time. The unweighted statistic is, I believe, over 50%. That's why I needed to weight the sample. About 60% is female. That's in line with the district-wide proportion, which is a little bit, I think it's about 57%. Majority Hispanic, as in the population. 60% receive financial aid. Over 50% receive government assistance. 7% live in temporary alternative housing, so some of them are homeless or live in shelters. And 1/5 have an annual income less than $15,000. So that's what I mean by, lots of economic insecurity.
So this is for like the students, I guess, or
Yeah. Yeah,
It's the household income, right?
it's the household income, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And some of these students also have families and whatnot.
Did you specifically have a variable for households with no cars? Because just looking at the average is not completely informative, right? So if you have.
Yeah, there is a separate variable for that. I'll talk about that more in the Q&A.
I would report that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I can report the whole distribution as well. That's also fine. Okay, so in that heading is wrong. My apologies. So in the actual choice experiment, I also summarize the modes that were made available, but also the modes that were selected. And a few things jump out. Right? The first is that cars are selected at a much higher rate than they're shown. Right? Cars are selected 9% of the time, only shown less than 5% of the time. The e-bike or scooter option was chosen a lot less than it was at a rate much lower than it was shown. Chosen about less than 4% of the time, shown 15% of the time. Metro Micro also suffered a similar fate. chosen a lot less than it was shown. And then self-driving car and train were chosen at about the same rates at which they were offered to participants. And many did opt to walk at the end of the last scenario. Yes.
Do you think the participants made the assumption that there was a similar cost financially for each one of these?
So they were shown, let me go back, let me go here. So they were shown that the travel costs, that was included in this.
Right, monetary costs. Was that an issue at all? Like, I'm thinking about the self-driving car. Are they assuming that it's cost less in terms of payment?
No, I'm not making that assumption. At least in the experimental design, I didn't make that assumption. So car and set in the Waymo service, there could plausibly be a scenario in which the cost for a car and the cost for a Waymo is similar or higher for Waymo, for example.
So you showed discrete values for each?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Okay. All right, so going into a little bit into the modeling framework, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'll just present the very basics. So the workhorse model that's used to kind of analyze the experimental data is the multinomial logit model, which is built from the random utility model framework. Basically, it's just decomposed into two components, a deterministic component and a random component, right? That's the V you see there, that's the deterministic component, right? And then the epsilon is the stochastic component. So in this deterministic component, you include the attribute value, the attributes of the different choices, right? So you have individual N, alternative I, scenario K, right? Because there's 3 different scenarios. And so here in that component, we include like the attribute values and individual characteristics as well. The error term of the multinomial logit is assumed to be independent across alternatives, which is known as the IA assumption and is very problematic, which is why I actually don't use that, because one of the policy outcomes of interest I'm looking at is mode substitution. And so making that assumption might impose unrealistic substitution patterns. Instead, I use the mixed multinomial logit model, which relaxes this assumption by making some of the parameters in the deterministic component random, okay? And in that model, the random parameters that I specify, particularly for travel time, are normally distributed. Okay. All right.
Is that realistic? I mean, travel time would be not normally distributed usually. Did you look at travel time in the NHTS, for example?
Again?
We can have an idea of what it looks like if you
Yes.
consider a distribution of travel time for students going to
But this is
school.
the distribution of the travel time. It's the distribution of the travel time parameter. Is
Okay,
normal.
okay.
Yeah.
But what you want to, okay, fine.
And that's for a given OD pair, for instance, right?
Yeah.
The assumption that it's normal. Or is it across all population, regardless of length of the trip and
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a log normal can force the parameter to be negative. I found out that that wasn't necessary. In some cases it is necessary, in many it's not. It actually is pretty standard practice to make travel time coefficients in this framework to be just normally distributed in a lot of cases. So moving on to, so the mixed multinomial logit will have kind of 2 components to it. One is focusing on the effects of the individual variables. The other will affect on the attribute characteristics. So we can look at the different effects of the individual variables for the different mode choices, right? You can see that GoPass, unsurprisingly, has a positive effect on bus choice probability, not a surprise. But maybe what is surprising is that for train, the effect is not significant, it's insignificant. Driver's licenses has a negative impact on bus and train choice probabilities. Not a surprise.
You mean that if someone has a driver's license, they are less likely to take GoPass, or what is it?
So they're less likely to choose, in the experiment, they're less likely to choose bus or train alternatives.
Okay.
Holding everything else constant, of course. when the scenario is now in the medium trip, so the 7-mile trip, the bus and e-bike choice probabilities went up, of course, holding everything else constant. And then in the shorter trip, the choice probabilities for bus, e-bike, self-driving cars increased. And then the alternative specific constants kind of measures a baseline preference for the different modes relative to car, because the base alternative is car. And for all modes, they're negative, which is not surprising. All right, so focusing a little bit on the attributes. For travel time, I specify the travel times depending on the scenario. So I specify different variables for the travel times by scenario. And because I'm making the parameters random, I'm also reporting the standard deviation. Okay, but the important part isn't so much the actual values of the coefficients, it's more so the derived values that you get. So the derived values you just take by dividing the coefficients of the attributes by the travel cost coefficient. And we get a value of travel time savings. In the long trip, it's about $35 an hour. In the medium trip, it's about $54. And the short trip, it falls to $25 an hour, partly because of the walk alternative being offered and, of course, being free. The marginal value of waiting time. So you can think of this as a penalty for waiting time is about $19 an hour. And the value of Wi-Fi is about $6.65. So moving from that, I'll now do a policy simulation where I essentially study 3 different policies. The first is to just see what happens if fares on transit are reduced. Second is to reduce travel times on transit. This can be done via dedicated bus lanes or express routes, bus rapid transit, etc. And the third is to add a congestion tax or usage fee for private vehicles. I'm going to focus on 2 particular outcomes. One is mode shares to look at mode substitution. And the second is to look at consumer surplus gains or losses just to see, is everyone better off under these policy scenarios? Okay, so I'm going to go very quickly through each of the scenarios. I'm going to start with the mode substitution of scenario 1, which is reducing fares. And the first thing you're going to see right off the bat, you can see transit is this blue line. I considered it as just the bus and train modes in my experiment. You'll see that if you look on the y-axis, this is the change in, or the predicted change in choice probability. And you see that this blue line doesn't go up much, right? About half a percentage point in the long and medium trip scenarios, and actually below that in the short trip scenario, right? So not a lot of mode substitution happening, even when you make the fare completely free, which is what GoPass is supposed to do, right? When you reduce travel times, you see a much different story, right? In the long and medium trip scenarios, you are seeing increases in choice probabilities of up to 15 percentage points in the long and medium trip scenarios. And of course, it is a much more muted impact in the short trip scenario. We still get an effect of about a 5 percentage point increase in the predicted transit mode choice share. Now, if you look at congestion taxes, what you will detect is that it is a very good way of getting people out of their cars, because you see this little red dotted line, which is meant for cars, going down. In the long trip scenario in particular, it goes down by about 8 percentage points. And bear in mind that cars are not offered as an alternative that often in this experiment. Now we shift our focus to changes to consumer surplus. Are people better off under these policy scenarios? So for each of these scenarios, I pick a particular instance. So for the fare reduction, I consider the GoPass scenario, which eliminates fares completely on transit. And we find that there are modest gains, right? If you think about a per trip basis, there are modest gains. So in the long trip scenario, the consumer surplus gain is about 56 cents. The medium trip, about 60 cents, pretty similar. And the short trip, the gains are much smaller, only about 19 cents. For reducing travel times on transit, the gains are huge. The long trip, they're almost $2.50 per trip for a 5% reduction in travel time. For the medium trip, they're even larger, $2.71. And in the short trip, they are quite small. About 19 cents in the short trip. Now, we go to the scenario of imposing a congestion charge because we saw that it was the best, it was the best policy at getting people out of their cars. But if you look at consumer surplus changes, it's welfare damaging, right? $1.47 worse off in the long trip scenario, and then 42 cents worse off in both the medium and short trip scenarios.
Do you have an explanation for this?
Yes, so essentially you can think of it as, you can almost think of it as how much would you need to compensate individuals for imposing certain policies, right? Like how much trying to think exactly the framing of it, but like how much would you have to compensate them for imposing these policies and then being just as well off as they were before? That's kind of like the implication in a certain sense.
Well, you said at the beginning that many of the students actually have very low income. So I would expect, charging them to be politically damaging, in
Yes.
addition to be economically damaging.
Yes.
Do you, in your survey, know if they have jobs
Yes.
outside? Because I mean,
Yes.
one very good thing of one great result is that you're highlighting that to them, time is very precious.
Yes.
That's my takeaway.
Yeah.
And I completely understand that, but it would be nice to know, what other requirements they have. Some may have children, even though they are just community college students. Some may have jobs, some may have both.
Right.
Is that something we know, or it's not known from the survey?
So it is, we do ask them about their employment status outside of their classes.
Okay,
It is not a character. It is something I could interact with some of the attribute variables.
okay.
I have tried some interactions. Most of them tend to be insignificant, but there are others I could also try.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just
Employment status being one of them, of course, surely.
Okay. No, but that's
So-
very interesting actually, because I think,
Yeah.
I mean, it's brings out something that makes complete sense.
Right. Right. And yeah, and so looking at like, what are the takeaways here? The first one is that, GoPass, it does improve, choosing bus in this little made up world, but not train. And that to me is fascinating. The policy simulations suggest that free fares alone don't really heavily influence mode choice,
Mhm.
because we saw that the share of transit riders increased by 0.5 percentage point, 0.7 percentage points. Reducing travel times shows the largest increase in the share of transit riders, and congestion taxes, while they do show the largest reductions in car choice, I think to John Danielle's point, they're welfare damaging. That said, I've said that, you might think, GoPass is not really effective. We also need to consider the costs. GoPass is actually a very low cost program for LA Metro to administer. I think their overall cost was only like $20 million, and it attracted almost 25 million riders. So
Not completely the case, I think, because they said that the cost is between $20 and $30 dollars per student per year.
for you.
So it's still substantial to them. But they, as you know,
Well, their operating budget is like $10 billion.
Yeah.
So
No, the one thing you should mention is that they get like 97% of their money from taxes, from sales taxes.
okay, and with that, I'll open the floor to any other questions or comments that you may have for me.
I think that was a great presentation. I would cheat a little bit and say and explain at the beginning why it makes sense to focus on the community college students based on
Okay.
what you know, right?
Right.
Because I mean, so if you're in K to 14, you can use it, but we know that middle schoolers and kindergartners, they just don't use it, right? It's a very small number. You know that from statistics, right?
Right.
So it makes complete sense to focus on the population that is more likely to use GoPass.
Right, yeah. And I would also, I think I would also add to the point that, there's also kind of life cycle effects to mode choice, right? So like things, if exposure to certain modes at like earlier ages will likely guide some of your transportation choices later in life. So I think studying this population, at least for me, is very interesting.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you said travel time in there. Does that include the 15, 20 minutes of extra waiting time and those things that the buses will
So they were told explicitly in the instructions to consider waiting time as a component of their travel time. That was explicitly in the instructions. I could even show you the prompt that says that.
But did they have a sense that bus, for instance, might involve an extra 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, we could also make the design to reflect that, right? And that was done so that was also done in the experimental design. So there are a few design mechanisms by which we can force certain realistic
sense of what
exactly.
picking up a bus would mean. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any comments, questions, thoughts?
All right, thank you.
If not, then we do a pause. And our next speaker is Negin, and Negin will be presenting through Zoom. Negin, can you share your screen? Hello, Negin. Actually, you want to? Yeah. Then we will like to welcome Professor Jay, our beloved Professor Jay, to introduce Negin.
Yeah. Let me see. All right. Welcome, Negin. Negin is finally a PhD student. Has been with us. Been working with me and Professor Highland over the years, mostly with me. And Negin joined us in about 5 years ago out of Iran, from the Sharif Institute of Technology, which is where she did her undergraduate. And then she did her master's here and continued for her PhD, and nearing the end of her PhD work. And it's been a pleasure working with Negin on transit-related topics. That's what her interest has been. She was also a USC UCI Long Beach Transit Fellow at one time, and so all yours, Negin, and on the topic of TNCs, transportation network companies being used as substitute. Or by the way, Vicky was part of Negin's development out here. Vicky was at USC when Negin was the transit fellow with Long Beach State on a project that we were doing with USC and all that. So Negin's going to talk about the TNC substitution related work that she's doing. That's replacing or substituting some of the buses in the transit system with TNC vehicles. And we'll hear more from her, because I don't know what she's doing most of the time. Like in the case of most of my students, they know. I don't. All yours, Negin.
Okay, hello everyone. Today I'm gonna talk about the partnership of transit agencies with transportation network companies, TNCs, for low demand service to see if it's beneficial for transit agencies. First, I'm gonna introduce our motivation and purpose of the study, and then show you the formulation, and I will present the result and conclusion, and I will discuss a further possibility for the research. So imagine you're sitting in the bus after your long shift at night, late at night, or you just had some dinner in the downtown, and you're sitting in the bus going home to a rural section of the city. First, when you're sitting in the bus, you might see many passengers with you, and they just get on board or just alight the bus. But as you go further and away from downtown, these numbers are decreasing. Less people getting in the bus. You might see like 4 or 5 people in the bus, or even less in some sections. until you get to your home and your destination. But it doesn't seem beneficial for transit agencies. Actually, that was one of the reasons that Long Beach Transit asked us to propose some solutions to solve their unproductive routes problem. What can happen? Transit can just cut their service for some segments and just say, okay, we don't go that far away from downtown, or we don't operate our bus like after 7 p.m. We just don't because it's not working for us. Then you won't have that option anymore. Either you have a car and because you don't have any transit option anymore, you will do a mood switch. You just need to use your personal vehicle. Or worse, maybe somebody doesn't have a personal vehicle, doesn't have the financial resources to buy that. And maybe their job, like late night shifts, are dependent on that, and not having the access to their job cause them some financial struggles. And this can cause equity issue, like cutting off the system while it was designed to give service. So there is a trade-off for transit agencies to maintain the service quality and reducing the cost. For solving this issue, they had tried several different things like microtransit, paratransit, demand responsive transit, and also TNCs. But among them, TNCs didn't get enough attention and research, so we are focusing on that. So we're getting to the purpose of this study, which is filling the gap in using TNC services for low demand areas and off-peak hours. We are proposing a practical framework and perspective to be applied to transit agencies. And then we are quantifying the factors that impact this decision and transit substitution with TNCs. Okay, so again, imagine you're sitting in the bus. This is the bus route. It can have more stops here and there. It's just we are zooming into a place that substitution can happen. This is the high demand area, probably like downtown, but it goes towards the low demand area. And originally the bus was supposed to go all through these stops and here just do a turnaround or like in a parking lot or anywhere and start the other direction trip from here. But now that we see that these sections are not that productive, we don't have many passengers, we propose a truncation point, which is a pair of stops. And these stops are new final stop and first stop of the bus route. So the bus now doesn't go all the way, just goes here and do a turn and go back. What happens to the passengers here who want to get to the bus, or the passengers who are already in the bus wants to go to their destination? Here where we are using the TNCs to give this service. You can see an animation here. So we are proposing a ride share that are given by TNCs. TNCs picking up passengers and just bring them to the first new bus stop. And they can go to the other direction, give service in other direction, or they can just disappear. And for other rides, we call another TNC. And here we have the bus. This is a normal bus stop. Passengers get out. But when they go to their new final stop, all the passengers are alighting. And in this study, we considered the capacity of TNCs to be 3. But if like some specific vehicle is suggested that has more capacity, or because of the policy of the transit agencies, they need like capacity of 2, that's also applicable to our formulation. And it's not only solve the problem of unproductive service, it also gives additional first mile, last mile solution to the passengers. This is our framework. We have two sets of input. First is related to transit agencies. We need to know how much does it cost to operate a bus per hour, per mile, whatever they provide us. We need passenger ridership information, how many passengers are boarding at each stop or alighting at each stop. Also, we use transit network and schedule information, which is available in GTFS data, and it's probably public for most of the agencies. In the other hand, we have TNC input. We need travel time and distance metrics between points. They're probably pickup and drop-offs location. We need a travel time for TNCs, how long it takes to move them from point to point. Also, we need some information about the contract. So in real world, when we are doing actual contract, they're gonna give us the exact numbers so we can decide. But now that we are just investigating the possibility, we can just do some assumption, like how they're gonna charge us. And using the bus operation cost and how many segments we are removing from our route, we can estimate the cost of like the saving we can earn for not operating the bus in those segments on those truncated segments. And with the passenger ridership data, so if there is a survey that can give us the exact OD of the passengers, that's perfect. And in reality, when the passengers are actually requesting the ride, they're gonna give us the pickup and delivery location. But for now, we can just estimate the passengers OD location in buffers of each stop. So if we know like 5 people are gonna get in the bus in this stop, we are assuming that their home locations are probably in some walking distance around this, like in a buffer around this stop, and we're just randomly select those locations. With these OD locations and contract terms of TNC, we are solving a pickup and delivery problem with time windows, and we'll find out the exact cost of the TNCs, and then like how much we save, how much it will cost. It just gives us the total saving, so we know how financially beneficial it was. We will understand it's better, like which route is better to be truncated or how many segments is better to truncate it. And also we can investigate how utility improved for the passengers when using this system. Some assumptions we had is that the network, the demand of the network is not uniform. One end has a higher demand and one end is has lower demand, and we are focusing on lower demand. And because of that, there is no congestion. However, this is not essential. Like we can actually operate in any type of network, but it probably doesn't work. Like if demand is high, definitely like the bus works better. And if there is a congestion, we need to reflect that congestion in travel times of the TNCs and also buses. But here we're just solving a simple one. Physical attributes. So I showed you we picked a pair of stops to be our truncation point. In theory, we can select any pair of stops in our route and select that, just calculate the cost, select another pair, calculate the cost, and just compare all of them together. But in reality, if we select them as a stop and that's our final and new first stop, and then the bus cannot go to the other direction immediately. The bus needs to go for like 2 blocks and then go to the other direction. Then the bus gonna be empty in those 2 blocks, and maybe it's not beneficial. We can just have riders on it for those 2 blocks. So we are not selecting all the possible truncation points. We are selecting them where it's close to the roundabout, a parking lot, a big intersection. And we are defining them as a candidate. So they're good candidates to be our truncation point.
Yes.
We assume that there is unlimited vehicles, so all the requests are fulfilled. and all of the riders gonna get a vehicle. The rides are shared and they're pre-requested, so it's not dynamically assigned, and the requested should be recorded before a vehicle starts its route. And in this problem, we don't consider any extra fee for passengers. So if they're paying for the bus already, they can just use this service, and there won't be any extra wait time. This is our formulation. So as I mentioned, when we are selecting a truncation point, we just calculate the whole cost for that, whole saving for that, and then later do the same for another truncation point and we compare together. When we are focusing only on one truncation point, the number of segments that we are not operating the bus is like constant. We are not changing the number of segments for that specific truncation point. Because of that, the bus saving is constant. In our minimization, we are trying to minimize the cost of operating the TNCs in those segments. And then because the saving is constant and when the cost is minimized, we get the most saving. There's different parameters that can affect the cost of operating TNCs. The vehicles can charge us a flat rate per hour. They can charge us for their operating time or operating distance or the number of passengers they're giving service. We have some factors here that can be zero in some situation, or they can be a number based on the contract. These are decision variables. I'm not going to go deep into the details of the optimization. It's just if a vehicle goes from a location to a location, it's 1. If it doesn't, it's 0. We have time variable, capacity variable, and like a variable that shows the vehicle is used or not. For a constraint, we have routing constraint. Each node should be visited only once. If a vehicle goes to a node, it should goes out. A pickup, a delivery should be after a pickup. I think it's in time window constraint. And pickup and delivery should be inside of the time windows of the passengers. We have capacity constraints that we track the capacity of the vehicle. We track the number of passengers in the vehicle after each node, and they should be less than capacity. And we have binary and non-negativity constraint. Here is our case study. We are using Long Beach transit data from 2019. We are using its scheduled ridership data. It has 30 routes. We showed the stops. They gave us the information that this area is downtown with high demand for high demand and for most of the routes. And the area away from here has lower demand. This is as an example, Route 93, which here is low demand and here is high demand. We are presenting 5 different truncation points. For example, when you are truncating at point 2, it means that all the stops here are truncated and operated by TNCs. As it is obvious, the truncation point with bigger number truncate more segments. We define early morning trips to start before 7 a.m. and late PM trips to start after 7 p.m. They're bus trips. And the average bus operating cost is $171 per hour. We assume walking distance to be 1/4 of the mile. This is usable when we are randomly assigning OD locations to passengers around each of these stops. First step, we are suggesting compensation to TNC drivers. Why we need to do that? TNCs are private companies. They rarely share data. We didn't find any exact data how they calculate the cost when like even in normal service, not even in a contract, how they operate and charge passengers. So we tried our best to suggest different methods which are close to real world, and it shouldn't be like they're not worse than the thing that drivers can earn when they're not operating in the contract. The formulation I showed you, each of these parameters, each of these sections are related to one column. So vehicle per hour, per vehicle per hour is reflected here, like alpha 0. We pay vehicles for the whole time that they're in the system. Per minute, it's the vehicles when they have the passengers in them, or the mileage when they have the passengers in them. And so we got these numbers like A, D, and E from a research that was done with Minneapolis City. They suggested these numbers when they're partnering with TNCs. We did some adjustment and did introduce some other numbers. And just to mention, Minneapolis has almost really close number for minimum wage compared to Long Beach. So that's why we thought it's a good number. And just to check them all, we are calculating what is a good number to compensate the drivers. This is the minimum wage, and this is the gas price and maintenance cost. We found out that $23 per hour is a good good earning, more than like it's a fair earning that drivers get compensated. And we checked all of our models, we're all satisfied this number, and we paid more than this number. And honestly, we don't think that TNC companies actually are paying these numbers after research on internet. We don't think that they actually pay this much to drivers. This is the result for contract A to G for operating TNC for different candidates in Route 93 early morning. And this is the red line is the bus cost. For most cases, the operating costs for TNCs are lower than the bus. Some specific cases that are higher than the bus cost happen when we are paying the TNC vehicles a flat rate. So they might be idle in the system. They might only give service to one passengers and they be idle, but we need to pay them. But we see that for the contracts that are paid by operating time or mileage or number of passengers, it's even cheaper for us and makes more sense. And until now, we only calculated the amount we are going to pay the drivers. But TNCs, they just want money too. They want to get their share. So what share we should pay them? We consider 20 to 70% share. For example, 20% share means that all the calculations we had in the last page was 80%, which was going to be given to the drivers. But now we need extra 20% to be given to TNC service, the company. This is the total cost for 93 AM contract E. And we see that like bus safe cost is around 65%. So what it means? It means that if the TNC decides to charge us more than 65%, for this specific route, it doesn't make sense. It's not cost effective anymore. We consider 40% for the rest of this research, as it's a good number. It seems fair and higher than enough to be paid to TNCs. And we also select contract E for rest of this paper again because first it was proposed by Minneapolis. The payment was higher between among the contracts. Other contracts like this is all the contracts that were paid by time and mileage, this was the higher one, so it's like somehow worst case scenario. So we are selecting contract E and 40%. In this section, I'm just going through it really fast. We investigated the impact of different factors of this on this saving. Like how many stops if we truncate, it leads to positive saving. It doesn't cost us money. We check different factors: inactive stops, passengers, inactive stop per mile, and passenger per mile, and more in next page. And not all of them are significant, and it's not like general. But if network especially is similar to Long Beach, and even if it's not similar, it gives us a good start on looking at the routes. And like if it matched the profile, if it looked beneficial, then we can investigate the formulation and optimization. Some interesting results, for example, here is that if we have more than 5.6 stop truncated per mile, then it's probably not beneficial because like the focus of the stops are high. Or if we have 2.9 passengers per mile wanting to get in the bus, it's probably like more crowded than be able to get right by TNC. It's better to just ride the buses. We have more factors here: passengers per stop. If we have more than 0.6 passengers per each stop, then it's better probably to ride the transit system instead of the TNCs. Maximum load, average load, and passenger amount. In this section, we are calculating the cost and bus saving for route 91, 92, and 93 for early morning and the late night, using contract fee and 40% TNC share. In many cases, we see that the highest saving, the blue ones are the saving of not operating the bus, the green is TNC cost, and the purple is the difference between them, which is our earning. In many cases, our earning is maximized somewhere in middle, like the candidates in the middle. So it means that in some point we get the maximum earning, and after that, because we are truncating more segments, like a candidate 4 compared to candidate 3, we truncate more segments, probably more passengers are there, and our saving is getting lower. So maybe here is a good idea to switch to transit. Maybe this is the best option for us to pick as a truncation point. In some cases, we don't even get any earning, but it shouldn't be the sole reason of transit agencies to just discard this scenario, because we are saving utility. We check the utility of the passengers for different, again, routes and time of the day. We calculate the wait time for both situations. The walking time is gonna be 0 when we are using TNC because it's door-to-door service. We consider transfer time between TNCs and transit, and we see that in all the cases, we are improving the utility. So we think that the decisions of transit agencies for selecting a route or time of the day or anything should be based on both of them. Maybe they can, based on their budget, maybe they can pay out of their pocket, but they improve the utility significantly. And we didn't put these here to be able to compare them together. Each of these have valuable information that can be used in deciding for that exact time of the day. And for the last section, we are doing a sensitivity analysis to see the impact of service design. We are comparing using transit in those sections, using door-to-door TNC service, which I was explaining, and the other service is using TNC, but only between stops. It doesn't give us first mile, last mile solution. And we see that with a little more cost, door-to-door saves a better, improve the utility much more than stop-to-stop TNC. both of them compared to transit, they might be lower cost or they might be higher cost. But compared together, of course, stop to stop has a lower cost than door to door, but the improvement in utility is much different. To conclude this research, we just proposed a formulation to do split sizing and routing and cost evaluation for TNCs. We proposed different contract terms. We selected different routes and segments for bus substitution by TNC. We investigated different metrics impact on TNC substitution savings. And with that, we are recommending the substitution in low ridership area and like off-peak hours. And probably some metrics can show us in advance if the system is going to work or not. For example, if the passenger per stop is more than 0.6, it's probably not cost efficient. And we showed saving of different candidates and changing passengers' utility, and also sensitivity analysis gave us the information that door-to-door could be a better option compared to stop-to-stop TNC service because of the improvement in utility. And other area that we can study and improve this research is to just formulate a dynamic model so we can get requests in real time. We can include other perspective of the stakeholders like policymakers or environmental effect. We can reallocate the resources we save, like buses and drivers that we are not operating anymore. We can operate them in some more crowded or more demand areas. We can add passenger fare. Maybe passengers are willing to pay a little money because they're getting first mile, last mile solution too. We can compare this system with other mobility solutions like microtransit services. And also, we should investigate how this system gonna affect the passengers. Are they gonna be more attracted to this partnership or not? And at the end, you can contact me with this email if you have any question. And this presentation is based on a paper which is under revision, but it's available here as an open source. Is there any question?
Thank you. I think we're a little bit out of time. Maybe Dr. J has some suggestions and questions.
No, I was just going to introduce you.
Any other questions for other folks?
So may I ask a question, Negin?
Again, we see you,
Oh, who's the boy here?
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm missing you too.
Professor Song.
Professor Song, how are you?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just a little bit curious that in this study that we assume that the traffic condition is not congested, and how we define the congestion level. And I'm a little bit curious that if the traffic scenario gets a little bit congested, then maybe the passengers may have like even higher like speeds like for walking than like taking the bus. Right?
Yeah, I understand that. The assumption is there because we are focusing on low demand area and also off-peak hours, like before 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. So the assumption is that the vehicles can go with low speed. But yeah, in that situation, because the congestion is reflected in the travel time matrix, probably the time window constraint makes us pay more for vehicles. Maybe it just gives us like no solution, or even like we need one vehicle per person, which will cost a lot. Then it will reflect its effect on the cost of the TNCs.
Thank you for the answer. And yeah, I think that it can also be potentially combined with the maybe the signal priorities and the yeah that the bus priority or the vehicle control, etc. to kind of explore any of these areas. So it can totally be extended, I think.
Thank you.
Okay, nice stop, Yuan. Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Yeah, I had a question. Did you consider the economic impacts as far as if you truncate the lines, maybe you reduce the hours or lay off some bus drivers, but you create new jobs in the TNC drivers? And like, is there a net job loss or gain? And then how would that affect like the local economy?
We didn't consider any, like we didn't calculate any economical effect, but we also paid attention to this because when Long Beach Transit came to us, they told us they cannot just remove the buses and drivers completely. Not only like because also the union union of bus drivers, they don't let us just remove a driver completely. That's why we can say it's a potential saving of the bus cost. In reality, we can reallocate them into some sections with more land, and it not only reuse, but it also will improve the mobility in those sections. And yeah, we didn't also explore the job opportunity we create for the TNCs. We just assumed that we're gonna organize the people who were already working in the TNC, but now they're just gathering under the contract.
Yeah, in other words, I think the assumption is that these buses and drivers would be just simply reassigned to better, higher productivity sectors. So which means that there is added, added benefits from the system which we are not considering.
So, thanks for comments and thoughts. Any other thoughts, comments? And if not, then we come to the last presentation. This is my presentation. If you want to go to restroom, please feel free.
So, thank you, Negin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And, okay, so it's time for me to introduce, best Chinese dancer in the West, right?
Thank you, Dr. J.
He's not going to dance.
I know.
Siwei
Did a
is,
demonstration.
yeah, we did have a Siwei dance program one of these days. He's highly sought after traditional Chinese dancer, professional or semi-professional dancer. Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce Siwei as a transportation researcher, not dancer. He joined us just before COVID.
2019.
2019, I think. Just before COVID, after he finished his undergraduate degree at Sun Yat-sen University in Guangzhou, right?
Yeah, Dr. J, you remember? Our
Of
university.
course, yeah, we remember those things from Guangzhou in Guangzhou. How do you say, right? Guangzhou in China, and he's done his master's and PhD at UCI. PhD getting close to completion. Jointly advised by me and Professor Highland. He's been working on some very interesting topic in terms of initially started with the idea that people can trade their travel options in terms of departure times from their homes, whether we could get peak spreading through that, and what would appear to be a trading happen, which is still there as part of the research, but I believe he's not talking about that today. But also simultaneously, as he's working on the smart and connected
Microtransit.
our SEC smart and the NSF project, a smart and connected communities project that we have from National Science Foundation, which has not been cut yet. So, and as part of that, he's also developing ideas on newer paradigms for planning purposes, ultimately for planning purposes, which goes down to certain fundamentally new concepts such as bathtub models, etc. That being popularized by our own Professor Jin, who has also been co-advising on this topic. And so there are some very interesting new directions that Siwei is working on. But I also want to mention that Siwei has this habit of getting awards at the various places. He had the best poster award last year at TRB, which we actually did not publicize enough. And so nobody remembers that.
Yes, another one too.
Yes, he got the best 3-minute thesis presentation award. I mean, these are our competitions among 30, 40 entries and all that at the Transportation Research Board, and he's a finalist now for the Grad Slam. So congratulations on all those things.
Thank you, Dr. J. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. So today, my presentation, the title of presentation is Stable Day-to-Day Departure Time Dynamics for Heterogeneous Travelers. This research is done by me, Professor Jin, and Professor J. So let's get to, so today's talk will include 5 parts: introduction, literature review, homogeneous travelers, and an extension from homogeneous travelers to heterogeneous travelers, and conclusion. So let's get to introduction first. So what do we study in this study? So imagine you depart from home. Maybe day 1, you choose 8 a.m. to depart. Day 2, you shift to 7 a.m. Day 3, maybe 7:30. And maybe day 4, a little bit before 7:30. And from day to day, you might develop a stable pattern to choose the time that you depart, either to work or to do other things, depart from home. And this is individually. And collectively, departure patterns. Maybe on day 1, the departure pattern looks like this. And maybe day 2, it looks like this. Day 3, and maybe day n. And from day to day, the departure patterns might converge to a situation called departure time user equilibrium. And so what we want to do in this study is we want to capture the pathway of travelers adjusting their departure time from day to day to reach a departure time user equilibrium. Then you might wonder, what is departure time user equilibrium? Departure time user equilibrium is reached when all travelers departing within the chosen period share the same travel cost, which is less than or equal to all the other periods that's non-chosen. So it's an extension of wardrobe equilibrium from route choice to departure time choice. All the departure time that you choose share the same cost, which is less than or equal to all the times that is not been chosen. So you might wonder, what's the current status of this research, departure time choice? So the departure time study started with Vickery's work in 1969, and Vickery's work proposed the bottleneck model to study departure time choice. And his study is an equilibrium analysis based on the uniformly distributed desired arrival time from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. So what do we mean by equilibrium analysis? Equilibrium analysis, Vickery specify a cost function and assume departure time equilibrium is reached. And then the derivative of the cost function with respect to the time, with respect to the time you choose to depart equal to 0. What does that mean? That means all the time that you choose to depart share the same cost. So the cost variation, this is cost variation with respect to time, is equal to 0. So it is based on, so it's analyzed on equilibrium state. But since it's equilibrium analysis, so it does not provide a pathway to analyze how travelers converge to their equilibrium. it just analyzes that equilibrium state. But just equilibrium analysis provides a lot of insight. Like Arnold, De Palma, and Lindsay, they study a lot of bottleneck model and then departure time equilibrium, and so that they calculate what is at the equilibrium, what is the departure rate look like, what is arrival rate look like, what's their cost look like, and most importantly, so this triangle area is the congestion in the bottleneck model. Is what most important is we will want, as a traffic engineer, we want to reduce the congestion. We want to minimize this area, and so they figure out different ways of like tolling to reduce congestion, eliminate the area. So this is the equilibrium analysis. So what about the status of the day-to-day departure time choices? So day-to-day departure time usually have two methods. One is simulation-based, one is dynamical model. And then we look at the simulation-based model. So simulation-based model, Mamasani, Chang, and Herman, they develop a simulation model, and then they show the stable pattern in simulation model. Let's look at this figure a little bit. This figure is the fraction of users who change their departure time. So maybe from day one, many people choose their departure time, and from day to day, nobody changes. And then if in this little figure, maybe day one, this variation, and then from day to day, you see it converges to a stable pattern. But this is a simulation model. Simulation model provides a good insight on each individual, on each agent. But simulation can capture each passenger's travel time adjustment process, but we cannot mathematically prove that it's stability. And then you might wonder, how can we mathematically prove a system is stable? Which means we need to show the stationary state of the dynamical system is departure time user equilibrium. And we want to show that stationary state is asymptotically stable. You might wonder, what's stationary state? Stationary state is basically, for example, if F is the departure time rate, then from day to day, then partial departure rate, partial day tau equal to 0, which means the departure rate is not changing. And this equals to 0 is the stationary state. And then we want that stationary state to be asymptotically stable. How can we prove that? We need to find a Neapolitan function to prove that the stationary state is asymptotically stable. Satisfy the following three conditions. Neapolitan function is non-negative. Neapolitan function at equilibrium point at the stationary state is equal to 0, and the Neapolitan function is monotonically decreased. The V partial tau is less than 0 at non-equilibrium points, equal to 0 at equilibrium points. So if we could find a Neapolitan function satisfies these conditions, then we could say that this system is asymptotically stable at the equilibrium point. Getting too excited. So you might wonder, what is the current status of the day-to-day departure time dynamics in a dynamical model? So let me give you a little bit background. So compared to so we study departure time choice. Compared to departure time choice, there's a route choice. In the day-to-day route choice, in the year of 1984, M.J. Smith from England, University of York, has developed a stable day-to-day dynamic for route choice. And so we call it Smith dynamic. And we also have replicator dynamic, which is from evolutionary game theory. And these two dynamics, they are stable in route choice. But Eero, 2008, he applies Smith dynamic into departure time choice. It's not stable. And Eero, 2019, apply replicator dynamic into departure time choice. Not stable as well. So since we don't have a stable dynamics, so researchers have been using the unstable dynamic to study the optimal tolling, study optimal pricing. So it also creates doubt. in the academic community, does it really exist a stable day-to-day departure time dynamics? We find it for 50 years, from 1969 to 2019. We can't find it. Guess what? 2020, Professor Jing found the first one that is stable. And through private conversation, Professor Jing said he spent 12 years on these problems. Finally find the first stable. Guess what? 1 year later, he found the second one. So maybe historian will say this is Jing's first stable dynamic, Jing's second stable dynamics. But we know Jing's a theorist. But what is it to do with me? So this is Jing's two dynamics. Since Jing's dynamic does not consider travelers' heterogeneity. So in the first chapter of my dissertation, I extend Jing's dynamics from single class to multi-class, capturing user heterogeneity. And since Jing does not consider the time-varying congestion pricing, Jing just consider without pricing scenario. So to extend from Jing, we apply different congestion pricing strategy on Jing's model, and also my extension of Jing. And so what we find is that the optimal fine toll could guide the system to a stable stationary system optimal state. And Jing does not consider network level congestion. So in the third chapter of my dissertation, we studied the network level departure time choice based and marginal social cost pricing based on Vickrey's work. So this is from day to day how the entry rate or the departure time in the network level look like after the congestion pricing. And lastly, Jing does not consider route choice decisions. So based on Professor Jing's input, in the last part of my dissertation, we studied the network level departure time choice in a realistic dynamic network, simulation-based dynamic traffic assignment. So Professor Jing is a pioneer in the simulation-based dynamic traffic assignment. Professor Jing's dissertation is the very first dissertation in the field of simulation-based dynamic traffic assignment. So Professor Jing and his advisor, Professor Monasani, opened the field. So I'm very privileged to work with Professor J, Professor Jing, and Professor Hyland. Professor Hyland's project funded this research. So I'm very grateful that I'll be able to work at UCI.
Important, he gave the money.
So let's take a minute to thank three advisors, three professors. So I would say if in any other university in the whole world, maybe I won't be able to do a dissertation like this, only at UCI.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have Jing's theoretical foundation. We also have Professor J's input in the dynamic traffic assignment, and both are pioneer in their field. And even Professor Hyland is also a pioneer in the dynamic pickup and drop-off vehicle routing problems. And Professor Hyland is nice enough to fund our research, and so we are very grateful that the supervision that I get from three professors is so in-depth to them, and I'm so excited to work on these problems. So, but today's focus will be the first one. How can we extend Jing's dynamics from single class to multi-class? So, let's let a little bit review of Jing's model. So homogeneous cases. So all the day-to-day research, they will usually have a within-day dynamics. They captures how traffic propagates within day. So what we use is the point queue model or bottleneck model. We have an inflow. This is what we call departure from home or arrive at the queue. And then the queue size, and then departure from queue, arrive at their work. Why researchers propose the bottleneck model is that bottleneck model assume that we only have one origin, one destination, one route. So what travelers decide is the time they depart, because all these other factors are controlled. One OD pair, one route, one mode. So travelers just decide when to depart from home. So it's a perfect models to study departure time. So within the dynamic point queue model, and since this is a day-to-day dynamics, we also have a day-to-day dynamic. What does it mean? It means travelers, they shift their departure time, departure choice from day to day. So we use a dynamical model to characterize that kind of departure adjustment, departure rate adjustment. So we have a within day, how the traffic propagates within day, and also have a day to day to characterize the dynamics. So yeah, there's a lot of equations. I don't go to the details, but you just know the main idea. So this is Jing's model. So let's run Jing's model. So this is my replicate of Jing's model. So we have a bottleneck model. Total number is 3,600 vehicles, capacity 1,800, and all these parameters, which I'm not going to get into details. So nodal equilibrium. So in the departure time choice, our setup is this bottleneck. And in day 0, we assume the departure rate is system optimal departure rate. System optimal in this sense is that all your departure rate equals to your capacity, so that there's no queue there. And then this, yeah. So system optimal is no queue. So if this departure here, then the middle here is queue. So right now you see there's no queue, and this is the total cost graph. Queuing cost, scheduling cost, and total cost. So and then this is a replicate of Jing. So you can see this is the departure rate from day to day. You can see the stable convergence pattern here, and then this is the normalized departure rate. You got F is departure rate, C is the capacity normalized. So Jing's model is stable. Basically, try to say is and then if you recall the first couple of minutes of our presentation, we want to find the upload function, so that the upload function is monotonically decreased, and when it reaches the equilibrium point, the departure, the upload function goes to 0, and you can see in Jing's model, departure time goes to 10. The upload function 10 minus 3. But in Jing's paper, it goes to 10 minus 8. But so what that means is just Jing's is stable, a replica of Jing. And then you might wonder, yeah. So in here, so this is Jing's result. Jing system optimal from day 0, and then it reaches user equilibrium on the last day. So this is user equilibrium's departure rate. So the people departure, the rate is higher in the beginning, and the rate is lower at the end. And you can see it reaches a departure time user equilibrium. So you take a look at the total cost. Total cost is here. So during this departure interval, all the total costs are the same. The departure time that are chosen, the costs are less than other departure time that are not chosen. So it reaches the departure time user equilibrium, Jing's model. Okay, then we talk about how we extend Jing's model. So this is Jing's formulation, and the next slide is our formulation. So it's a little bit everywhere. So what we do is that, so you see this little g is group heterogeneity. So to study heterogeneity, the easiest way is you assume there's 2 groups. But more harder is you assume there's a continual distribution of their attributes. So here, discrete is the easiest way to start with. And so you see all the cost, different group of travelers, they have their cost, they have their parameters, and different group of people, they shift their departure time differently. So it's a basic idea. So, oh yeah, so it is like a tube. And you could imagine there are 2 types of liquid, 2 types of class there. They are kind of shifting differently. but they share the same cutting plane, which is the same like capacity. There are two groups that need to share. So just a little bit analogy, but might not be correct. Since the equation is hyperbolic conservation equation, so it's an analogy to liquid, and is similar to the multi-commodity LWR model. Yeah, get a little bit. Yeah, so let's take a look at the simulation setup. So we have two different class. This simulation setup is we have different alpha and mu. Let me introduce what alpha means because I think I forgot to introduce that. So in the bottleneck model, you have queuing cost, and then you have the cost for arrive early and the cost for arrive late. So the lambda here is the queuing cost, is how you're sensitive to the queuing. It appears here, and then the mu and nu, mu is the cost for arrive early. Like if you arrive 1 hour early to your work, it might cost you $25. In terms of that, you evaluate, it costs you $25. If you arrive late 1 hour, it costs you $100. So what this scenario means is you have different queuing cost over. Sorry, different queuing costs over the arrival early, but same arrival late and same desired arrival time. So this is our result for multi-class dynamics. You can see the convergence pattern as a pretty stable. And so we could look at group number one. Group number one, it has higher sensitivity to queuing cost. So you see, then group one will shift to the shoulder of the peak. What does that mean? So you can also see the blue line is the queuing cost. So because group one has higher sensitivity to queuing cost, so that they shift to this area with lower queuing cost. So it actually captures the heterogeneity. Group two has lower sensitivity to queuing. So he doesn't mind. He does not mind to endure more queuing time. So group two will shift to the middle, and you see this part, the total cost is the same. So the multi-class departure user equilibrium is that for each class you share the same cost, and different class they might have different cost. And then so this is the so we show that this pattern seems stable. But if we go back to the first couple of minutes of the presentation, we need to find a Neapolis function to actually say that this model is stable. But I also think I might find one, but I haven't sent it to Professor J and Professor Jing. So yeah. Yeah, so if you don't mind, I just but it's too complicated to describe. Too complicated. Okay, then I just show the Neapolis function. So this is the departure rate on day 0. This departure rate on day 5,000 in two groups, and this is what we call Neapolis. What I found Neapolis function, and then from day to day, Neapolis function goes to 10⁻². But I need to check with two professors to make sure everything is correct. So you might wonder, what's the significance of this work? What is the main takeaway message for this work? The main takeaway message is, in this diagram, in this literature diagram, our name will be here. Our name will be here. Jing, first stable day to day, also stable, heterogeneous. So this is our contribution. So to sum up, we extend Jing's local stable dynamics from single class to multi-class, capturing user heterogeneity. Results show that different user groups has a stable convergence pattern. The upload function goes to 10-2 from day to day. And future works including designing different tolling schemes to drive the system to a stable, stationary system optimal state. So with that, I conclude my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
I have one comment or a question. Would you say that heterogeneity actually is a good thing? It makes the systems stable easier. It's the system stability easier, right? If you didn't have heterogeneity, it probably, I guess, Professor Jin has found stability even then, but it may be more difficult to get, right? If there is no heterogeneity. I don't know.
So maybe harder to prove.
Yeah.
Heterogeneity, they're harder to prove.
That's a really interesting point.
Because I think if I mean you need options, right? Basically, for some people to move this way, some people to go the other way. I mean, if they're not there, then it's unstable. I mean, I'm thinking about your water tube analogy, right? If you only have one type of water in it, they can't just kind of rearrange.
Interesting.
Right?
But I think two type of water could also rearrange, but they just
No, but two types of water can, but if it's not, if it's just one type, then you might have less chance for rearrangement, right?
Yeah.
Because they all have certain, I guess, cause functions.
Maybe I kind of get where you come from. This is kind of related to like an overreaction to
Yeah.
about choice guidance.
Exactly.
I feel you. Hopefully, this help you to
Yeah.
think about. I mean, if everybody respond in the same way,
Yeah.
exactly.
then it's oscillating.
It'll oscillate.
Yeah, that's a well-known result.
It oscillates, so it takes much longer for all of them to learn.
Yeah.
Whereas if there is some heterogeneity, then those oscillations would be less, and they all gain from that.
Yeah.
And
Right?
how
I
do you
mean-
capture this heterogeneity? Like, what are the variables that you're introducing to this heterogeneous group? Because I guess like there are infinite ways of making
Value
it
of time,
heterogeneous,
basically,
right?
right? That's your variable of it.
Like different values of
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
or
Maybe different consequences for being late or early.
I
Yes.
guess there are many explanations that explain this different value of time, right?
Yeah.
My
This-
question is like, what are you introducing? How are you determining these heterogeneous groups?
Oh, you mean how we
Like,
No,
calibrate?
No. What is sort of the definition of the heterogeneity?
yeah, how do you capture this? Like from surveys, from
Oh.
I don't know.
If we want to find out how heterogeneous travelers are, the way to do is to do a survey. And then you find a mean, and then you find a standard deviation of your value of time, value of arriving early, value of arriving late. And then you might kind of study different heterogeneity. But in our case, the way we do heterogeneity is all these are assumed. All these are assumed.
Yeah, that was my guess, right? But we want to capture this, of course, at some point. And if you have any idea of.
But again, it can be done
empirically also.
through revealed or stated preference, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So you can
That's very
actually-
interesting, I think. So,
Yeah, that Texas work. By the way, the Malmasani Jack Herman work. That figure, the bottom figure, I think I produced it for Chang, because he had already left. That I think I did if I remember correctly. No, but this was followed with the, with the 3-route experiment that we did after that, so with route choice and departure time both together for each of Tom. But anyway, in that case, we actually found the heterogeneity of the participants, the distribution from their revealed behavior. And they, they had done the switching. And so we had the same, those two parameters, your mu and lambda were there in Tong and
Chang's
Chang and Tong.
They're right.
Early and lateness, the schedule delay, early and late,
Okay.
parameters, and they were calibrated because they made the decisions for over, I'm sorry to take up a lot of time, but 12 alternatives for every 5 minutes of the morning departure on 3 routes. So you basically had 36 alternatives.
Yeah.
So in 1986, we were running 36.
That must have taken days.
36, 36 alternative probit model. With whatever Clark's approximation or whatever, and that probit model, with the assumption of the lateness and all that, could calibrate these parameters from the revealed profiles. So yeah, your answer is correct. I'm just adding to it.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. J. Thank you, Laura, for the question.
I do have a further question.
Yes, sir.
Kind of related to this. So the ultimate goal is to design tolling pricing schemes to drive the system towards stability, right?
Oh, yeah, system optimal.
System optimal, right? So if you used a model where there's no heterogeneity and a model with heterogeneity, could you compare the n number of days it takes to reach stability, right? And that could be a comparison I feel like might be beneficial in the sense of, these don't really always go to like stability in the sense of like you do not have infinite n days. You only have n-1 days, where n day is like change to demand, like significant change to demand. Then everyone has to recalibrate. So if you do not have a tolling scheme that could reach stability within your limited days, then it's kind of a problem. So if you using heterogeneity could reach stability quicker, that would be beneficial.
Yeah, I think that's a good thought.
And without heterogeneity, I'm sure it will take longer.
Yeah.
Because of the overreaction that Professor Jin was talking about. So, hey, diversity is good.
Yeah.
So now you're sad to what I started with.
We are getting to the philosophical point.
Philosophical side. Yes.
I mean, it's very related, right? When I see this work, it's amazing. And it's just like, we're also assuming a stable, like land use pattern. Like cities change and this stability will continue. So it's very interesting that we are trying to stabilize the system, but the system is playing against us.
Yeah.
So that's also very interesting, right? And of course, we cannot capture everything in the model, but it's just interesting to have it in mind.
Yeah. So actually, talking about overreaction, I'm just thinking about this one. This kind of model actually with some underlying assumption, actually that would prevent such overreaction. Because in that overreaction situation, basically we assume that everybody can freely choose any routes. But this model actually is a so-called local model. Basically just allow people to switch like, Siwei's like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Or time scale, not switching, 30 minutes or 1 hour from day to day. So actually that is a mechanism, make this stable. And that is also the mechanism why other models, which allow so-called global switching, definitely leads to overreaction. But this model is because only local restricted reaction actually becomes stable. That is hopefully, that's my thought. But diversity definitely might be worth to further, quantify. you know, how.
But again, going back to the 1986, work, I was a master's student who lost 40 days of sleep because I wrote the simulation for that. I mean, they wrote the paper. But,
Whoa.
Where's your name?
I mean, not that, I would imagine a program.
but anyway, so I remember after about 20 days, we had 200 people who were all staff at UT Austin taking part in the study, and they were all told that assume that you are traveling in the system of and every day we'll simulate and go back and say your decision caused this. And it was, it had an analogy to three routes in Austin, so they could kind of position themselves in. Anyway, by about the 15th day, 20th day, almost 80-90% had of the people had converged in their choices. But we had a boundedly rational behavior model with a threshold. So that is equivalent to the 5 minutes that you're talking about. That threshold of this, boundedly rational model. So they wouldn't just switch randomly, and they'll switch only if you get certain amount of benefits for one thing. But anyway, after about 20 days, there was this about 3 or 4 people. But after the 25th day, we lost me and another master student, Doug Steffen. We lost an extra week of sleep, all because of one old lady who just will not converge. One lady. And we'll go one day, give her the thing, okay, I'm leaving at 7:20. Next day we'll go, I'm going at 7:40. She is still just flipping between 20 minutes.
Those were kids now.
Models don't capture.
Finally, we're stopping. We're not asking her anymore. So,
It's a woman's problem. Where she was.
That is very interesting. I remember I read a similar message from the article, but I did not know this article when I was writing too. Otherwise, I would be much easier to convince others. Should be stable, should be local.
oh, I see. Yeah.
I remember talking. I mean, from now on, I would.
You know what she's saying? There's this J guy.
I just like get these fellows out. She was happy
So I
too.
give him radio time
He
and
wouldn't
stop
go.
going.
He's like, she'll write something and give it to her. So.
This is very interesting, and I think that our friend Montana would be interested in what comes after this, because if we talk about pricing schemes and heterogeneity, a third concept that is equity, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there's a big field in there for us to.
That's why we need peer-to-peer trading.
I think one just quick suggestion in terms of introducing the heterogeneity more systematically, because you'd mentioned surveys. I think there's very simple ways you can introduce heterogeneity of calibrating the different values of time at different costs. So I would think about going out into the field, conducting you could probably get away with a stated preference experiment and try to get enough observations so you can do at least a latent class analysis. So that way you can kind of systematically classify into the different classes. Right, and you can always adjust, you can tinker around with do you want a 3-class model, do you want a 4-class model?
Yeah, that was my next question. How many classes do we want? To start?
Well, he also looked at just the value of time heterogeneity.
Right.
Kevin Roth is the one who had looked at it. So we actually even had a meeting with Kevin up in Minnesota. Now,
Wisconsin.
So Kevin and Bento at
USC, Bento.
USC, right?
Yeah.
The Bento Roth, they did a study on the expressway.
Value of urgency.
Value of urgency. So that was based on data from the 10 expressway toll data.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
LA-I-10.
They connected it to the vehicle, vehicle armor basically,
Perfect. Yeah.
and made a calibration of. That's the only work that we know that that Mike Highland and I, and you know.
I feel like this could be derived a little bit. I mean, you could verify with some surveys, but from like industry data, as far as you can make some assumption about certain types of jobs have to be there on time. And if you're not on time, you're fired immediately or after one time fired. Versus other types of jobs, you know, you could be a half hour late and no one really cares. And you could find all of this information even at the local level based upon like employment data. Right? And then you could say, okay, so 5% of the population is a student, they cannot be late to class. 5% is like some type of other worker cannot be late versus 10% office worker, they could be half hour late.
You could,
Right?
that's kind of like what you can do to calibrate like late classes.
Yeah.
And then you could just do some survey one time or something, asking different people in different industries to verify like what percent can be late, not late.
Yeah.
And use that as your, you know, stochastic whatever model and feed it in industry data for the local area. And now you have distribution of heterogeneity for at least the penalty for being late term.
Yes. I thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I thank you, everyone. We appreciate your attendance. And it's a little bit over preview of the events that we have on April 4th. We have another